we'll be talking about hegemony. This chapter or this lecture would be slightly different from the previous ones, and the reason behind that is that we are going to take a small detour or venture into IR theory. IR theory is a field that is very dynamic in nature. It is a field which is slightly complex. There are too many concepts overlap, but it is important to know these concepts because it gives us an understanding of what exactly is taking place in the world. So, I have been repeatedly talking about the unipolar world, multipolar world, rule-based order. These are these are facts that are happening, but when you have to take a look, we have to take a look at what is happening from the theoretical prism. It gives us a better understanding of how things function. It gives us a way to rationalize how things function. Okay, so today we are going to talk about theory, and the topic, of course, is hegemony. And we are going to try to understand what is hegemony. We are going to try to understand what is soft and smart power, hard power. And then in the subsequent lectures, when we talk about US, we'll be able to understand how this theory is being used in real life politics. Okay, so what is hegemony? Hegemony can be summed up in very simple words as the position of being the most powerful country in the global politics or in the world, and by virtue of this position, the state has the ability to influence others. So let me repeat, basically hegemony entails that it's a position of power, the most powerful state, and by virtue of this position, you have the ability to influence other states. Now this position is there because the state has military might, that is, it has the best of weapons. It has economic might, that means it has a lot of money to spend on international affairs, as well as kind of fund wars, look into peace dialogues and everything. So it has the economic might to give money to as for lending in the form of loans and all of that. So A, military might, second, economic might. Third is political clout. What does political clout mean? Basically, has political influence over other countries. And this can happen in the form of democracy or through any other political means. Right? So these three things are important. Now this is usually accompanied even by cultural norms. Basically talking about that the hegemon would have cultural influence over the others. When we talk about globalization, we'll be talking about the concept of cultural homogeneity, wherein we are going to talk about how the American way of living has become the global way of living. For example, McDonald's has become equivalent to fast food, even though in our culture we still have samosas, right? So looking at a McDonald's somewhere, we go like, we know that's going to be fast food there. So the McDonald way, McDonaldization or the American way has become the global way of living. So that is cultural influence. So to repeat, a hegemon would have military might, economic might, political clout, as well as cultural influence. Now hegemony comes from the word hegemon. It comes from the word hegemonia. It's a Greek word. Now this basically means to dominate over, right? So basically if you look at it, hegemony comes from the word hegemonia, which means to dominate over, and that is exactly what the hegemon does. So in global politics we have US, which is known as Pax Americana. It is the period where America is the hegemon. Before this, there was Pax Britannica, that is the colonial period, wherein Britain was the superpower or the hegemon. Remember that saying that the sun never sets on the British Empire. So basically the Britain or the British Empire was the hegemon in global politics at that point of time. So both Pax Americana and Pax Britannica are two phases where we have a clear-cut global hegemon. Apart from that, of course, there are regional hegemons. So in a regional setting, there are countries which are more powerful. For example, in South Africa, you have Brazil. In Gulf, you have Saudi Arabia, and so on. So in particular regions, you would have regional hegemons also. Now, hegemony is of different types. There is political hegemony, there is military hegemony, and there is something called the cultural hegemony also. Now, the concept of cultural hegemony was given by Antonio Gramsci. Now, Antonio Gramsci had said that influence doesn't always have to be through military or economy. It can also happen through ideas. He was pointing out that when there is a hegemon, the ruling class, they try to bring together people under their influence through words and ideas. It is not necessary that it has to be through military might or economic. So it doesn't have to be the military coming in and forcing you to be part of it, or it is giving you loans and saying that now that I have given you loan, you are now, you have to listen to what I have to say. Instead, Antonio Gramsci points out that it could be just ideas. Even when I give an idea and you accept it, you're slowly coming into my zone of influence. The way I write, the way I talk, or the way, let me give an example from global politics, the way US talks about human rights. Even though human rights as a concept, even though it's universal in nature, it is not necessary that it is going to be, part of every traditional culture. And that is something that one has to, recognize, that tradition cultures get subsumed when these universal declarations are made. And through human rights, that idea of human rights has been able to create a sense of, coming into the influence of US's understanding of what human rights is. Not necessarily every country has to follow the same idea of human rights, right? But still we are all participant to the Universal Declaration, which is US based, right? So similarly, ideas, words, the way norms are created, institutions are created, and that is how cultural hegemony is being established. And if you look at it in today's world, this is what is very important, because social media plays an important role in creating that influence. Right, the way we wear our clothes, what we eat, the way we talk, it's all influence from somewhere else. Right. So that is about hegemony. Now, if we move on, there is a theory of Hegemonic Stability Theory. Now, what does HST stand for? The Hegemonic Stability Theory has been given by Kindleberger, and he has said that when there is a hegemon in international politics, the global politics is very peaceful. So in the times of Pax Britannica and Pax Americana, when there is single power, that's hegemon is there is no substantial challenges, it is a very peaceful world order. But whenever there is the hegemon has been challenged, or is on its power is dwindling, chaos is present in the world order, right? So Kindleberger has given a lot of examples of periods of history where there is no single power, like the period of Great Depression and so on, wherein when there's a lack of hegemony in international politics, chaos has been a part of it. Now, this has of course been criticized, and it has been criticized by a famous IR analyst or a thinker, Robert Cohen. Robert Cohen, in his book After Hegemony, has argued that when there is a hegemon, the hegemon would create certain institutions to support its interest. So when the hegemon power, the hegemonic power is declining or has collapsed, these institutions would continue with that order, and thereby it will not lead to complete collapse and chaos, but stability as well. So the example that can be given is, let's say that the rule-based order that US has created in the form of IMF or World Trade Organization or even the World Bank. So these institutions would even exist if US power starts declining or collapses. And this is the institution which is going to continue with the rule-based order that US had built into, right? So that it is not necessary that a hegemon is important for stability in international politics. Institutions are important for international stability. So that is Robert Cohen's argument about hegemonic stability. Okay, challenge to hegemony. Now, there are basically two approaches to hegemony. How do you approach hegemony? So one is through bandwagoning. Bandwagon is basically when weaker states align with the stronger states in order to not be seen as a challenger, right? So we do have, the NATO allies coming in a very strong partnership with US, so that it is very clear-cut understanding that we are your friends. Okay, so there is no challenge from us. EU is an example of that, right? Secondly, you have lying low or not engagement, no engagement. So basically, you are hiding or you are not engaged. You are not engaging, and the idea is not to be a very strong voice in the international politics, right? So these are two ways of kind of coexisting with the hegemon. The third is, of course, becoming a challenger. And we are going to be repeatedly talking about the challenging equation, especially in the chapter discussion of alternative centers of power. Now, when we look at the challenging role, where can the challenge come from? It can come from states. Now, which kind of states? It can either be regional hegemon who are already powerful in their region, and they already have a substantial zone of influence. So it could be a regional hegemon, or B, it could be an international, or it can be a state which has equivalent military might and economic might as the hegemon. So for example, China has an enormous economic wealth as well as a military might equivalent to America. So it can come up as a challenger to American hegemony, right? So there are two ways a state can become a challenger to a global hegemon. The second way of challenging is non-state actors. So let me again write this down so that it's not confusing. So A, it can be a state which is going to challenge. If it's a state, it has to be a regional hegemon. And if it's not a regional hegemon, it has to be equal to the military and economic might of the existing hegemon. And the second is a non-state actor. This could be in the form of terror outfits, because they have nothing to lose. They have nothing to lose, they have no territory, they have no population that they are so worried about. So they can clearly give a challenge. 9/11 was a challenge to US hegemony, right? So there are ways of challenging hegemony as well.